welcome back to another spaceexplr episodes. Today we have a very special guest on. His name is Ian LAUER. So a little bit of an information about Ian and the things that he's working on currently. So he's an astronomer, astrophotographer, adventurer, and a public speaker with a passion for sharing the wonders of the night sky. With a background in astrophysics, Ian has worked with the top telescope manufacturers and retailers in the world, building telescope systems for private and professional observatories, astrophotographers, government projects, and educational institutes. So outside the astronomy, backpacking, camping, and metal music are among his other passions. And of course, for more information, and you should get in contact with Ian personally and follow him again on social media. So that will be Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and the website that's called ianlauerastro.com. It is going to be included in the show notes down below. So Ian, thanks again for joining me today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm really, really excited about this.
Thank you. I'm excited too, you're doing some incredible work. And before we started to talk, before I hit the record button, you kind of mentioned that your girlfriend is this artist that, of course, she's producing this amazing work. And of course, we're going to include her social media for people to follow up, in the show notes as well, because that's awesome. But your personal background, can you talk about how did you get involved with astrophotography and astronomy in general?
Well, really, I think with astronomy, I don't know if maybe this happened to you, but when I was young, I would always watch like those space documentaries on TV, and I was always like, man, these are so cool. Like space is really fascinating, but I never really saw it as a career path, just because I wasn't good at math. I'm sure many people can relate to that, the intimidation of it. So as I was growing up and graduating high school and just going through that, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, but I told myself, I was like, look, I need to pick something because I'm kind of going nowhere. I'm just working jobs here and there, and I need to have a direction. So I just told myself, you know what, I'm going to do astronomy because I've always liked it. And you know what, if I'm scared of doing math, then I'll do it scared. Like, why not? So they said, if you want to do astronomy, you got to do physics. That's the way to go if you want to do astronomy. I was like, great. I've never taken a physics class in my life. I didn't know what physics was about, but I said, if that's what it takes to do astronomy, that's what I need to do. And so I remember my school counselor saying, okay, you need to take this math class. It's trigonometry. That's your very first step into going down this career path. Great, trigonometry. Let's go ahead and do it. Well, I took the class and I completely failed it. And I just said, that's it. Well, astronomy, that career is done. That dream is done. Let's find something else. And about a year later, I took a field study trip out to Death Valley, and the teacher was actually, he had a master's degree in astronomy. And so, it came up and I just asked a lot of questions. He kind of lit that fire again, that passion about astronomy that I had. And I was like, you know what, maybe I should try again, but this time actually try, because I took a hard look at myself and realized I didn't really put in the effort I needed to learn the stuff, learn math, learn all these things. I kind of was just coasting along. So got back the next semester, took the trigonometry class, passed it with flying colors, and moved all the way up and said, let's just keep going. Let's ride this train until I can't do it anymore. And I got all the way up through college and university and got my degree in astrophysics. And I was so happy. It felt like the pinnacle of my dreams. And then I realized that I don't like doing research. I just wasn't fun. I thought that was like, if you're an astrophysicist, you do research and you learn all these cool things. So I was like, yeah, that's so exciting. And I did a couple of different things with research, and I was just like, man, this is really boring. I just did not like it. So didn't jive with research, and graduated. Didn't know what I wanted to do, but eventually got hired in a telescope manufacturer called Meade Instruments as an intern, just by chance. All the stars and planets aligned, no pun intended. And worked at Meade Instruments for a bit, and then got picked up by OPT Telescopes, and that was my introduction into astrophotography, because they're the astrophotography experts there, and it just took off from there. learned all the tricks of the trade and learned from the experts who were working at OPT at the time. And that's where I developed my love for astrophotography. And never took a picture before, but of space before, other than maybe some raw data at university. But yeah, so that's kind of where I got my start.
That's a good start. I mean, that's very interesting story. I mean, coming from you, kind of figuring things out and getting involved with astrophysics and, working in that, which, as you said, it kind of became this boring thing, kind of research and all that, which I think I had somebody before in the show that kind of told me that, look, if the thing that you're working on for a long time and it's still exciting, it could be that something is wrong with that. Because he said, the things that we're working on, if whatever that is, building a business or just doing an important research, sometime it will become boring. There will be a point that will be like, man, it's just boring. But it's the process. That's the life that we live is sometimes it's boring. But I think it could, some breakthrough moments happen sometimes where we do that type of research. So maybe that's, again, my personal perspective for the people who are looking to get involved with astrophysics and they think, oh man, it's going to be boring, but it could be very interesting, again, the research from a research standpoint. So, but for the people who are looking to pursue astrophotography routes, what would you tell those people? I mean, first of all, because I think for people to get involved with that, it could be a little bit pricey. Of course, there is an infinite learning curve in that as well, which of course we should talk about. But how people can get inspired, why people should start exploring the space and take photos of it.
Yeah. Well, just to touch on the previous point, just because astrophysics research was boring for me won't mean it's boring for you. Just for me, I just wasn't enjoying the day in, day out. I love the idea and the pursuit, but me doing it personally, it just wasn't jiving with me. And that's why I think astrophotography drew me in, is because there's an element of creativity and traveling and going out to these crazy wild locations that I didn't really get when doing research, and that attracted me more. So to get into astrophotography, I think the best way to start is just using a camera. Like most people have like a Canon or a Sony camera that they just take pictures with, general day photography. Just go out at night, do a long exposure of the stars, and you'd be so surprised to see what you get. And bringing the stars in, I mean, when you first see those images come up on your little live view screen on your cameras, your face will light up, because every time that happens, I see the little countdown timer going, and I'm like, okay, this is a 20-second shot, 18, 19, 20. Oh my gosh. And it always looks so cool. It's always so exciting.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So, but what about, getting inspired, because I'm sure there's a bunch of people who will get inspired from this episode today because of your personal journey and experience that you have that will ignite that kind of fire in them. But besides that, how people can get inspired, because a lot of it, again, what you do personally or her girlfriend does when it comes to, painting these beautiful pictures is a passion. You have this kind of passion that's, never, you just don't burn out, because you will have these moments that you're like, I don't want to do it. It's whatever excuses we would come up with. So how people can become passionate about the astrophotography?
Well, I think really doing it, right? Really just getting out there and doing it. And you'll see that passion will start to develop, because I think what happens a lot of the time is we get interested in something and then we try it. And then maybe we just, we're not very good at it, or we're not really feeling it after, maybe a couple days or a couple weeks, and then it kind of just falls off. I really think that if you can push yourself through that initial period of being a beginner, right? If you can push yourself through that, there's a whole new world of possibilities that await you. Just if you give it that little extra effort, you'll have so many more things and creative things to explore. So I think just really pushing through that initial barrier, because for me, for example, my dad got me a guitar when I was 16 because I loved music, right? And I took lessons for about 4 weeks and got bored. I was, learning chords and all these things, and I just got bored of it really quickly. Like, it was really exciting. Oh, I got a guitar, so cool. And then a couple weeks later, I wasn't even picking it up or looking at it anymore. And then I had that same moment of just do the work, put a little bit of work in, put some effort into it, and see what happens. And I did that. I push through some of the boring practices and learning the different chords correctly with correct hand positioning and pick holding. And then all of a sudden I knew the basics, and that allowed me to it opened up a whole new world of different possibilities I could explore. All of a sudden now I could hear a song and be like, oh, I can kind of see how they're playing that, and then pick up the guitar and be like, oh yeah, this is how they do it. Oh, and then it kind of just feeds itself. It's like a positive feedback loop. So just getting through that initial struggle of being a beginner, I think that's going to really, really help people.
Got it. So yeah, so those struggles will always arise because, as I mentioned, there's a steep learning curve when it comes to astrophotography. But first of all, talking about the equipment, as you mentioned, let's say buying, or if somebody who's already, have an existing DSLR that it can use for Milky Way shooting. So besides that, I mean, what else can you do with DSLR? Are we talking about just Milky Way photos? Can you shoot nebulas and galaxies? And do you need to do some upgrading with the camera? And does that upgrading is going to mess up my camera for day usage as well?
So there are things that you can do to like upgrade your camera. You can get it so it's like more sensitive to infrared, but all that stuff aside, really, if you just have your camera and your lens, you'll be doing Milky Way, and you can do different kinds of pictures for like Milky Way with objects in the foreground and things like that. And then to move up to the next level, to maybe shoot galaxies or nebulae and things like that. Really, if you get a star tracker, which is just one of them is called the Star Adventure, which is what I use from Skywatcher. It's only like $300 or $400. You just slap it on a tripod, put your camera on. Now you can do even longer exposures and get more of that faint detail, even with a wide field lens. Because a lot of photographers already have tons of different lenses. They got their wide field lenses, which are great for Milky Way, and maybe they got their longer focal length, maybe 100 or 250 millimeter focal length lenses. You put that on your camera and on the tracker, all of a sudden you have the ability to take photos of like the Andromeda galaxy or the Orion Nebula. And now you've moved up from shooting the Milky Way to shooting galaxies and nebula. And that's really the next step that you need to take. And it's not really that bad of a learning curve. Really the steep learning curve comes up when you start moving into more advanced equipment, like big equatorial mounts that track, where you hook up to computers, and maybe cooled dedicated astronomy cameras and telescopes. But just sticking with the DSLR to start out with, I think that'll keep you inspired, because it's these small incremental steps that aren't too difficult. And then when you make that big leap into the advanced equipment, you're no longer scared, because you see how far you've come already. So it keeps it exciting. It keeps that passion there.
Yeah, exactly. That's great advice. Thank you for that. So what about getting a mount? Because that's kind of an important piece when it comes to astrophotography. So, and can you talk about the differences in equatorial and alt-azimuth mounts, and what people should buy in the beginning stages?
Of course, yeah. Well, we have this saying from my old company at OPT. It was, there are three things you always need to, or the top three most important things of astrophotography. The first one is your mount. The second one is your mount. And the third one is your mount, right? That's how important the tracking mount is, because you can have $10,000 glass, you can have a $6,000 camera, you can have all the best software and things like that. But if it can't track properly, your images are going to be garbage. So yes, the mount is so important when it comes to shooting deep space astrophotography. So equatorial mounts versus alt-azimuth mounts. The best way I can describe it is an alt-azimuth mount. Usually what you see is like two fork arms with a telescope, and it's really simple. It just kind of moves up and down stair stepping, because one is altitude and one is azimuth, which is kind of your horizon. So very easy for us to visualize that. And then equatorial, those are actually aligned with the spin of the Earth, and it counteracts the rotation of the Earth. So you can keep objects tracked as they move across the night sky while only moving one motor, or one axis. So it makes tracking very, very smooth and easy. So my advice to people who want to get into astrophotography, always go with equatorial, because that will ensure you can do longer exposures. With alt-az mounts, you're going to be limited with your exposures. Now, ALTAS, might be good for planetary astrophotography. If that's all you want to do, then, you might be okay with an ALTAS mount. But for 99% of the cases, even with planetary, an equatorial mount is the way to go.
Got it. So let's assume that these people who are watching or listening to this episode, they already have DSLR camera, and now they're looking to buy this mount, which is just saying it's kind of the important piece in the astrophotography, one of the main important pieces. So, because it could be a little bit pricey when it comes to that equipment. So for the beginners, again, what would you recommend? What type of brand and how much would that cost for them?
Yeah, so generally the entry level equatorial mount for doing kind of more deep sky astrophotography, I would say is there's the Celestron Advanced VX mount, and those are usually like $700 or $800. But since the mount is the most important piece of equipment, if you spend that little extra bit of money, you're going to have a piece of equipment that's going to last you a long, long time and give you the option to use different types of telescopes and different setups. So my go-to recommendation would be, it's called the EQ6R Pro. It's from Skywatcher. That is a powerhouse of a mount. It's so good. I've used it before, and it's just an incredible piece of equipment. And if you go on YouTube and see a lot of the YouTubers on who do astrophotography, you'll see a good majority of them are using that mount. And it's because it's just so good for the price. And I think it's about $1,500. But nowadays you can finance stuff, and you can pay over time. So it actually makes it really, really easy to get into astrophotography.
Got it. Got it. Good. Okay. So let's talk about upgrading. Let's say people are gonna they maybe, have a little bit of experience now with DSLR, and they're like, okay, I need to take another step. I want to shoot some nebulas and galaxies and do some more stuff. So now they're looking to buy the first telescope. So what's your personal advice on that?
So telescopes, man, it becomes a personal preference. So for me, I will always be a refractor guy. I just love, having those lenses. I love the wide field stuff. I love those big nebulas with all the different colors. I love all the different gaseous regions, Orion Nebula, or like the Heart Nebula, Jellyfish Nebula. All those are great. So wide field refractors are what I love. So, one that I use, it's from Mead Instruments. It's a 70 millimeter astrograph. There's another one that was just released by Radian Telescopes. It's the Raptor 61. That thing looks amazing, and I can't wait to try that one out. And then when it comes to bigger refractors, the Esprit 150 from Skywatcher, it's a monster telescope. But man, it is so awesome to use, so fun to use. And I will say, with those refractors, as you get bigger and bigger apertures, bigger telescopes, the price is going to go up exponentially. And that's where you start to look into the different kinds of telescopes. Now, if you want to go with more magnification, one of the things you can do is get what's called a Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope. Those are some of the most versatile telescopes because they have the long focal lengths, which mean you can get, those really small objects like planetary nebulas, where before I was talking about, maybe more emission nebulas like Orion Nebula. These Schmidt-Cassegrain telescopes are really good for getting planetary nebulas, like Thor's helmet, I believe, is a planetary nebula. And it's really good for planetary astrophotography as well. So if you want to shoot Jupiter, or if you want to shoot Saturn or Mars, you'll almost always see people shooting those objects with some sort of Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope, really, really long focal length, to make sure that they can get those and resolve those details, getting those fine structures of the caps on Mars and stuff like that. You need the reach. And so that's where the long focal length comes in.
Got it. Okay. So what about the filters? Can you talk about the filters? And again, because a lot of people, I think a lot of us right now are stuck in cities with kind of very, heavy light polluted areas, and, Bortle scale up to 8 and 9, and, but people still doing some amazing work, even like, where you're currently right now in England, and then London, you get people very like light polluted areas, and they're still doing the work. So how important for people is, when it comes to considering buying the filters, and can you talk about the filters that kind of help them to tackle that light pollution kind of problem?
Yeah, of course, of course. So generally, if you take your color camera out and you take a photo of the night sky and say you're in a city, you're going to get all of that light from the city lights and cars passing by and all that, all in your image, as well as the starlight. And since all the starlight and all the objects in space are very, very faint, it's just going to be washed out. You're going to get a really ugly kind of whitish shot. And so to solve that problem, you use what's called narrowband filters or line filters. What those do is they reject all light except for very, very specific wavelengths of light. And these wavelengths of light are selected because they're kind of the more numerous, or I guess the better way to say it is, objects in space emit these specific wavelengths of light. And they're hydrogen alpha, S2, and O3. So sulfur 2 and oxygen 3. Those are the 3 wavelengths that these filters let in. And so you have one of each, right? You have your hydrogen filter, your oxygen filter, your sulfur filter, right? And you put it in front of your sensor, you take a photo, it blocks out all the light except for that one wavelength, and you're actually getting data. And that allows you to shoot in these light polluted areas. Now, the problem with those is you need a monochrome camera. So you need a dedicated astronomy camera to really utilize those. And, that can really drive the price up. And some of these filters can also be very, very expensive. So, if you have the budget for it, monochrome camera with all of these filters, that's going to give you incredible, incredible data. And these are the same things that the Hubble telescope uses. The famous pillars of creation shot, or like some of the shots like the Lagoon Nebula that you see from Hubble, and you see these beautiful, blues and reds and greens and all these different colors. It's using those same filters, and it's just arranging them in certain ways to give you specific colors. So you assign, like, let's say hydrogen, you assign that to the green color channel, or maybe oxygen, you assign that to the blue color channel. And that's where you get these, what they call the Hubble palette colors. Yeah. But now we astrophotographers are able to do that from here, because now we have access to that kind of equipment. So that's a really good way to get into it if you have the budget for it. But if you don't, and you only have a color camera, one of the things I'm very, very proud of when I was working at OPT is we helped solve the problem of light pollution and people with one-shot color cameras with this filter called the Triad Ultra filter. And this allows you to shoot these same targets that you could with narrowband filters with one-shot color camera cameras. So that solves the problem of needing that monochrome camera. You no longer need that. Now you still use your one-shot color camera in the city. And we really put it to the test, because we went to downtown New York and we went to Times Square and we tested the filter right there in Times Square next to the H&M building with all the crowds of thousands of people walking by. We set up our telescopes and we tested the Triad Ultra filter there, and we got data coming in. It was awesome. And it was kind of strange too, because people are kind of looking at you like, what are they doing here? Like, what is that thing? Yeah. Well, and the first time we did that too, we actually got kicked out by the counterterrorism unit.
Wow. That is, yeah. Yeah, so again, the filter that you're talking about, because I'm just looking at the OPT website that, of course, you can find at optcorp.com. And I'm just looking at the filter. Of course, the price could be a little bit pricey for some people in the beginning stages. Mm-hmm. But if you just look at the photos that you can see, because there's a photo of the filter itself and the photos that you probably can take. So I assume these photos been taken in very high level, like a very light, heavy polluted areas. But mm-hmm. It's awesome. If you can accomplish that with this filter, it's definitely worth the price.
Oh, definitely. And if you look at the filters that you need to, if you want to get the same results with your, like I was talking about before, those line filters or those narrowband filters and one shot monochrome camera, each of those filters is going to be about $900. And, you need all three of them. So that's already driving you up to, just under $3,000 just for those filters, where you can get all of those plus an extra line that we have in there, hydrogen beta. So that's why they call it the 4-in-1 filter. So instead of spending $3,000 on filters, you just spend, a lot less with the Triad Ultra, and it works, man. I mean, there are all over Instagram, there's people who post using the Triad Ultra. Man, their photos blow me away, and that's why I love this hobby, is because people love sharing what they do. They love sharing their results. They love sharing their techniques. It's so inspiring, and seeing people take photos from San Francisco or LA. You would never think you can't even see the stars from LA. One guy joked on one of the Space Junk episodes. He was like, "Look, my light pollution is so bad, I have a hard time seeing the full moon."
Wow.
And people are taking pictures of deep space with it. It's incredible.
Wow, that is incredible. Okay, so can you talk for the people again who never heard about Bahtinov mask, and what is it used for?
Bahtinov mask is used for helping you focus. It's essentially a piece of, usually it's made of plastic, and it has a bunch of lines cut out. You put it on the front of your telescope, and what it does is it creates a bunch of these diffraction spikes around really bright stars. And it helps you focus, because once all those stars are all lined up and making that perfect, that star, it lines up all the lines across the star, that means you're in focus. If, two of them are lined up, but one of them is off, then that means you need to adjust focus. And as you get closer and closer into sharp focus, they all line up on that star and you're good to go. So Bahtinov masks, highly recommend for Milky Way, for deep sky, for anything. Make sure your focus is tack sharp.
Got it. So talking about alignment, can you talk about polar alignment and how to do it for the people using equipment?
Yeah, of course. So polar alignment is when you have an equatorial mount. Essentially what you want to do, and this is strictly for the Northern Hemisphere. Unfortunately, I've never done polar alignment in the Southern Hemisphere, so I'm sorry everyone who's down under. But for those of you in the Northern Hemisphere, for polar alignment, what you're essentially doing is you're taking your mount and pointing it right at Polaris. And so when you do that, that means when you tell your telescope to point to an object, it points to it and it allows it to track as that object moves across the sky. So really, all you're really doing is lining your mount up with Polaris, which is the North Star.
Got it. Okay, so the question is, because I think a lot of people, sometimes they don't understand that actually the final picture that you see on Instagram or on the website, again, because you have these pictures on your personal website that people should go and check them out. It's not the picture, it's not actually the thing that you see once you're looking through the telescope, right? It's all these kind of behind the scenes, stacking and using post editing, softwares to make those pictures look the way they look, right? So can you talk about what is stacking? What does stacking images mean, and what do you use for post editing as a software?
Of course. So stacking, what that means is you're taking a bunch of exposures. Let's say if you have your camera and you're taking a 2-minute shot, right? You'll get some data in there, but what you want to do is take multiples of that 2-minute shot and put them all together, because what that does is give you a good, what's called signal to noise ratio. What it does is ensures that your shots, after you stack them, look really, really clean. It removes a lot of the noise. It ensures that, the structures that you're picking up in your camera from the objects in deep space are actually there, and it's not just some kind of noise or in the background. So what it's doing is just ensuring your shots are very, very clean. So that's what stacking does, and it's extremely important for astrophotography because, you're doing these long exposures. Your images can be really noisy. And there's tons of examples out there. If you Google stacking for astrophotography, it'll give you like an example of a single 5-minute shot, and then 5 stacked 5-minute shots, and then like 25 stacked 5-minute shots. So it gives you a really good visual of what it's doing for you. But once you do that, you're still not seeing that final image. It's still going to look dark. All that data is in there, but it's our job as astrophotographers to pull that data out there, because Again, it's just going to kind of look either black and white, or it's just going to kind of look like a dim shot. And so post processing, that's where that really comes into play, is ensuring that we can pull out all of that data that's actually there. There's tons of software out there that you can use. I like using, one of the simplest ones I like using is called Nebulosity. Really, really good for beginners, and very, very inexpensive. For those who want to be more advanced, there's a program called PixInsight. You'll see most of the advanced astrophotographers use PixInsight. It's a very complicated program to use, but again, there's lots of tutorials that you can watch online to help you out, and very, very powerful tool for astrophotographers. And then once you get all that detail and you get the shot that you want, then you usually what people will do is pop it over to something like Photoshop, just to kind of enhance some colors or just add some of those tiny little final details, kind of like a season to taste method, where you just kind of make it look the way you really want. And then that's how you get your final image.
Got it. So what would you recommend for a beginner? I mean, if a person, because I think if it's a younger generation who is watching, I'm sure they maybe dabble a little bit with a Photoshop or something like that. Maybe not with the PixInsight, but for the beginner who never ever did anything with Photoshop, what would you recommend them to work on? Is it just go directly in a PixInsight or work on a Photoshop? What will be your kind of personal preference?
Yeah, I would say, if you're good with Photoshop, you can always do it in there. Obviously, Photoshop is very powerful, but a lot of the processes will become manual and becomes tedious as you have lots of exposures. I always recommend people start out with something like Nebulosity. Really, really good program. And it's so easy to use. And it's, just a couple of clicks here and there, and boom, you got an image. And then even if you're familiar with Photoshop, it has levels and curves, some of the basic things that Photoshop has, to allow you to tease out a lot of that data that you have. Another one would be Deep Sky Stacker. That's a free one, very, very popular. Loads of free tutorials online. And, if it's the younger generation, they're probably just going to look for any free tutorial they can. So, one of those two, I think, would be really good until you can kind of get yourself to PixInsight. But you'll always use Photoshop just to kind of touch up or give you just those final little details on your shot to really make it more personalized.
Got it. So talking about those making a couple of clicks, what about making one click? I mean, is there kind of softwares that are based on let's say machine learning or artificial intelligence based softwares available for us to kind of make it an easy entry point where you can, with a couple or one click, we can make these amazing photographs, and that will at least help us to produce this type of work.
Not quite, but there's two telescope brands that have just come out recently, where they basically automate everything for you and spit out a final image that you can throw into Photoshop or something. It's one of them is called the EV scope from Unistellar, and the other is called Stellina. And both of those are basically telescopes with built-in cameras, and they do all of the heavy lifting for you. Which when they first came out, caused a lot of buzz and a lot of uproar in the astronomy and astrophotography community, because everyone's saying, oh, it's taking out all of the hard work and all of the fun. Like, what's the point of this piece of equipment? But I honestly feel like that's going to be the future. A lot of it is going to be automation, because, I mean, a lot of the process of astrophotography, I don't really enjoy that much. It's part of the process, right? It's like, I don't want to have to make sure everything's perfectly aligned again, and, have everything set up and tweak here and there just to make sure everything's perfect, and then make sure my guiding is good and make any adjustments. If all that could be automated, I would be so happy, because, at the end of the day, we're all doing it to get the data, to get the end result, and play with that data to make the image that we want to see. So I think that kind of is going to be the future of it. I don't know how long until we have something that does all this, automatically aligns itself for you, and then automatically does perfect guiding for you and does all the calibration and all that stuff. But we're getting closer and closer. A lot of software are now starting to automate things, and there are remote observatories where it is that one click, and you just say, go to Andromeda, goes to Andromeda, and you tell it, I want this many shots and this many exposures, and it does it for you. So the observatory level is really getting closer and closer to that automation, where kind of the entry level isn't quite there yet.
Got it. So for the people who are looking to make those astrophotography photos, and maybe it's not like they're gonna be doing that every single day. Maybe because of the where they're located in, like the country that you're in right now. Currently, it could be a little bit cloudy comparing to, let's say, California, Las Vegas, or Arizona, or somewhere else that you're in the world, and you having kind of those problems, maybe light pollution, and you just don't want to buy the equipment that could cost thousands of euros or dollars, and maybe you just want to take a couple shots a year. So would you recommend for those people to go about, let's say, with Telescope Live?
Actually, one thing I would recommend is Clear Skies Network on twitch.tv.
Hmm.
So that's one run by a host of people, but Dustin Gibson is really the one who kind of founded that. And what they do is they use these remote observatories that are located in Southern California and Texas, and they're trying to put one in every time zone around the world. That's the ultimate goal. But they go on Twitch, they let people come in, control the telescope, and get the data, and then they can get the data for free off like a Dropbox links or something, and then just play with the data. So now you're no longer limited to, if you have terrible weather, you can just go on to Clear Skies Network, work with them, ask, hey, I'd love to, get some data of this object, or maybe they even will guide you through controlling it. Just get part of that community, get talking, and get to know these people on Clear Skies Network, and they'll let you run the observatories. One of my favorites was they had a 13-year-old kid run the observatory and take pictures, and it was just the most incredible thing ever. And another one we had, I believe it was somebody from Pakistan who was running the telescope all the way in California, and then getting that data and using that data to process. So it's so incredible now. So Clear Skies Network, definitely the place to go.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks for that recommendation. So again, looking at the personal background, what would you consider like as a personal biggest achievement so far?
Ooh, man, that's a hard question.
I
So,
know it's tough. I mean, there's a lot of posts that you have on Instagram, and besides that, I'm sure there's a lot of great content that you put out. But what would you consider that's at least been recognized, kind of the biggest thing that you've ever done so far?
if it's okay, I'll do two different ones. I'll do one that's kind of for me, and then maybe one that's more of like giving back. So the one for me personally, I feel like my biggest achievement was seeing the total solar eclipse in 2017. That was a mind-blowing experience. Like, if you ever get the chance to see a total solar eclipse, you need to go. No excuses. You have to go, no matter what, because it seriously is. It's so hard to explain the emotion you get when you see it. Because I thought it would just be, I've seen partials and I've seen lunar
Hmm.
eclipses. For me, it's solar or nothing now, and it has to be a total solar eclipse because it's oh my gosh, it's so hard to explain. But I will say, when I was there, I actually got contracted to help with a car commercial. They were filming the solar eclipse and doing all this stuff for a car commercial, so I was there, kind of helping and consulting for them. And we were doing a live stream on the side. One of the production companies, we were doing a live stream during the solar eclipse, and right when totality hit, I lost my mind. I was like, my arms were in the air. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. And like the two girls who were the hosts of the live stream, they were like crying and like they had tears coming down their face. And, it was just so wild. And then like after it, I got a call from my boss, and she was like, that was so amazing. I was like, I know, it's crazy. We had like, 50,000 people watching. And she started laughing. And I'm like, why are you laughing? And she's like, check that number again. It's up to 2 million. And I was like,
Wow.
wow. So I really hope that me and my raw, real emotion just inspired people to kind of go see a total solar eclipse, because it's so worth it. That's a huge achievement for me. Um, and then another one for me would be actually is just the number of kids that I've reached by doing outreach. So a lot of the time, what we'll do when I'm in Southern California is set up a telescope on the sidewalk and do sidewalk astronomy. And people come up and we let them look through the telescope, but it's the kids that you can tell, like, they get so excited about it. They see the moon. Or I remember one time we're showing the Orion Nebula to this kid. He's looking through the telescope. I was like, so that's the Orion Nebula. He's like, wow, Orion Nebula. I've heard of that. It's like, yeah, and it's like, over 1,000 light years away. And he's just like, whoa, light years, whoa. He's just so excited about it. So all these kids that, inspiring the next generation of astronomers and astrophotographers or scientists or just, people interested in space, the thousands that I've talked to, it just makes me so happy knowing that I've made an impact in that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. For the people who are looking for a next solar eclipse, so it says that it's going to be the total solar eclipse is going to be 4th of December 2021 next year. So maybe you want to keep a note for that. And again, talking about astrophysics and a little bit of things that I wanted to ask you is, have you, like, prior to when you used to do that research and maybe now, I don't know how much of you getting involved with that currently, but is there some parts of that people should be paying attention to? Because I'm looking at official NASA website and there's more than a few things that are listed when it comes to astrophysics. So is there some particular events or, like cosmos events or something that's happening that people should be paying attention to?
In terms of astrophysics, there's always new things happening. There's always really, really cool excuse me. There's always really, really cool research being done. I mean, just the gravitational wave discovery was so big that a couple years ago. I mean, that was just game changing. But I think for me personally, what people should start paying attention to is space junk, space traffic, because there's so much that we're launching up there, and we're leaving little bits of paint specks even, and little pieces of debris, nuts and bolts and little flaps coming off. And sometimes we think like, oh well, space is so big, it's so massive, what doesn't matter that much. But sure, if you fill infinity, it takes a long time to fill infinity. But when you confine that down to, say, planet Earth, and it's all stuck in orbit around planet Earth, becomes a very, very big problem. And what's even worse is there's this thing that's called the Kessler syndrome. It's essentially what happens is you have, let's say, two satellites, two of them are dead, so they can't maneuver out of the way. They collide with each other. Now they make, tens of thousands of new pieces of debris. And sometimes some of these tiny little pieces of debris, even like a speck of paint, can damage or even destroy a satellite. And so now these two satellites that collided have just created 10,000 new pieces of space debris. And even if one of those collided with another satellite, that satellite and that collision now creates another, 10,000 pieces of space debris. And all of a sudden you get this kind of runaway effect of all this space junk just filling up the upper or low Earth orbit. And now we can't even launch rockets out because it might another piece of space junk might hit the rocket. And so it's becoming a bigger and bigger problem. And no one is really doing much about it because there's just no real international laws to do anything about it. And it's hard to find these objects. It's almost impossible to find objects that are less than a centimeter. And even these objects that are less than a centimeter can do massive amounts of damage to our satellites. And our everyday lives are so dependent on satellites, that if they all start getting knocked out, or if one thing gets knocked out and another, and we have this runaway effect, our daily lives are going to be affected so greatly. And I think it's something that we really need to start paying attention to and really need to start doing something about.
Got it. Because we need an internet. Like I want to take that selfie in a very distant place somewhere in the forest. It's needed. It's needed for my Insta, man. I have to do it. I have to do it.
So do it for the Insta.
So I guess you're not a big fan of Starlink then, right?
I'm kind of indifferent about it. A lot of astrophotographers were upset because Starlink was launched, but you know what? I'll be honest, I'm on the other side of the fence on that one. I actually think it's a good thing that we're launching Starlink and giving internet access to pretty much the whole world eventually, right? And you know what? The software for astrophotography is so good that it makes it really easy to process out any streaks that satellites make in your image. So I don't mind.
Got it. So, and I think Elon was talking about kind of painting those black, so at least we would not see those, because we're talking about thousands of different satellites will be launched in the next, let's say, 10 years. So of course, because we at the same time we're getting built, like the extremely large telescope that is getting built. I think it's at Atacama, in Peru as well, which again is going to be the largest, a telescope ever built, which diameter of almost 40 meters, mirror. So which of course is going to do some amazing work, but at the same time we have more and more satellites that will kind of, and of course there's softwares that you said that will, give us kind of that option to kind of get rid of the trails. But yeah, as you're saying, you're just paying attention to that. So, which of course at the same time, I think satellites are getting smaller. All of these kind of CubeSats are getting launched right now instead of those large satellites. So again, we're looking for solutions, but part of those solutions and what's currently happening in space industries is, like we're about to colonize Mars and create a moon base, and I mean do all the crazy stuff, right? So what's other space projects that are coming up in the near future that people maybe don't know about but should be paying attention to as well?
Well, I mean, let's look at the other places that we're going to in the solar system, right? Like, sending a helicopter. I think it was the helicopter rover, or whatever it's called. I forgot the name of it, but I think that one's going to like Titan or Europa. I don't remember. Do you remember which planet it's going to?
I think it's going with the Mars rover. I think they're going to try to implement the helicopter there for the first time on Mars.
Yeah, they've got that one, and then there's like one that's supposed to. It got delayed to like 2028 or something. I believe it's going to one of the moons, either around Jupiter or Saturn, to explore. If it is Titan, it's exploring the methane lakes. But that, all that kind of stuff is super, super exciting because I mean, I don't know, exploring space is so much fun, and it's such the way that I look at it is, when we were a much younger species, it was just inherently in us to go out and explore and to find new places. And it was so exciting. But once you know, cover the entire earth, you kind of, it starts to fade out and you don't have those opportunities anymore. But now that we can go into space, that passion and that drive is now back, and we want to go out and explore. We're explorers. It's like Carl Sagan said, we're explorers. We've always been explorers. Yeah. And I think that's why so many people love space, is because it ignites the kind of innate drive to explore and to discover. That's why space is so cool. I love space, if you couldn't tell.
It is cool. I mean, we're talking about kind of infinite, something that's infinite, that's expanding at the rate of universe, because, nothing expands faster than universe itself. But, it's like, it's just unknown. It's just like, what's out there? It's something there out there, because now we talked about kind of phosphine on Venus. And again, so the helicopter that you talked about, it's Titan on Saturn's moon, Titan Dragonfly, that's called. I just Googled it fast. Thank you, Google, for that. So again, so we're looking to do these amazing things when it comes to exploration. We never even left our solar system yet. So who knows what's happening in Milky Way? Who knows what's happening in Andromeda and all these surrounding, galaxies? And what about the other galaxies? That there are billions of them, trillions of them. So there could be some exciting, stuff coming up, in the near future, hopefully as well. So again, coming back to the question, how people can get educated and how people can get involved. I mean, do you have to be a, astrophysicist? Do you have to have a PhD, master's degree, or like how a day, just a regular person can get involved with the space related projects?
Definitely. Well, there's so many different ways that you can get involved. I mean, one of them is NASA has their Solar System Ambassador program. That's an easy way to get involved. Other ways is, just doing sidewalk astronomy. That alone, I've met so many people who work for, places like NASA, who used to work for like satellite companies, who work for SpaceX and JPL and Northrop Grumman, all these, companies that work with space and space related business. They are attracted to things like sidewalk astronomy. They want to go up and look through the telescope and see the moon and the craters on the moon. And then you just start conversation. And all of a sudden, now you've met all these different people and you can network with different people who are all in different fields, but still in this related field of space. And again, that's one of the things I love about space, and there's people from so many different backgrounds. people who have studied different things or in different kinds of businesses. Maybe they're entrepreneurs, maybe they're engineers, maybe they work administration, it doesn't matter, but they all work in companies that are space-based, so you don't need a PhD, in astrophysics or engineering to be able to do this kind of stuff. A lot of the time, you just need the experience or the drive if you want to get involved in active research, or if you want to, study in university. You can always do that. That's always an option. I'm the living proof that you don't need to be an expert in mathematics to graduate with a degree in astrophysics. It just takes a little bit more work from those of us who are maybe not as good at math.
Here you go. And that's a great message. That's a lot of promising message to a lot of people who don't have those, again, mathematical kind of, skills, which there's a lot of that involved in space exploration. But yeah, so it's awesome. I mean, you do a lot of great stuff, and I'm very happy that we connected again through Instagram, through social media, and that's my biggest recommendations for people who are looking to get involved with the space projects, space-related projects. Just go and reach out to people again on Instagram, Twitter, all over the social media, because these people are available. So I'm so grateful that Ian made the time today. And look, these people are making time to talk about space because of their personal passion. So that is awesome. So besides all of these projects that you're currently working on, do you have kind of personal kind of deep feelings, or let's say, or a footprint or a legacy that you want to leave also?
Yeah, I'd say if the efforts that I put into doing outreach or taking photos, even if it inspires one single person, I feel like it's already made it worth it, because it only takes one person to really revolutionize and change the world. I mean, that one kid that you showed the moon to on that one day could become the next Albert Einstein. And because, it was me that did that, or it was you, maybe one person just, happened to stumble upon this podcast and listen to it and go, oh, you know what, maybe I should start taking pictures. And then all of a sudden they discover some kind of, like a new supernova, or maybe some kind of new planetary body, or just, there's so many different ways. And I think just keep doing what you're doing, that will inspire people, right? Whether it's doing podcasts, doing live talks, showing people the moon or the planets, because again, if you inspire that one person who can change the entire world, it makes it all that much more worth it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, and I think now it's a great time for people to get involved again. So with astrophotography in particular, because again, as we spoke about, there's all these, equipment is available, and it doesn't have to be, hundreds of thousands of dollars. You can actually start, and you can buy secondhand equipment that, of course, if you just Google, you're going to find a bunch of websites that's selling that off almost brand new, because sometimes it's a shame that a lot of people buy equipment, they never use it, keep it in a garage, and then they sell it off. But it's good for you if you're looking to get involved. So it's easy to start, and at the same time, because we're in a lockdown and we're still watching during the COVID, a lot of people sitting at home, they're watching TV, but actually nobody watches TV anymore. Everybody's on social media, and they see these photos of, Orion Nebula or Pelican Nebula, and they see the planets and the galaxies, and they're like, whoa, what's happening here? And that's where this kind of, effort where people get involved, because I see so many people getting involved with that. And I think we should leverage that time that, again, we're thinking it's a bad time that we're in a COVID and time is available. We should use that time and get more people involved with the space-related projects. So yeah, awesome. So make sure to get in contact with Ian personally. As I mentioned, all the social media, including the website, ianlauer.astro.com, is going to be included down below. So make sure to do that. And one thing that I always want to ask you guys and girls, if you pass this episode along to your friend, and could be any friend, I want you to send this episode to that person, because that episode is full of inspiration, strategies, tips, and everything else on how you and why you should get involved with astrophotography and space-related projects. Personally, for you, Ian, again, big thank you for coming over today, sharing your personal passion, whys and how-tos people can get involved. And again, I love the fact that you're looking to give back and leave the footprint for the generations to come. So I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure to, share this episode. And as always, I'll see you next time. And don't forget, keep exploring.